Welcome to School Zone, the show all about your local school districts here in the White Mountains. I'm your host, Tommy Boy from White Mountain Radio. Today on the show, we have Mike Wright, the superintendent of Blue Ridge Schools. Welcome to School Zone, Mike.
Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate it.
Well, one of the angles I wanted to go at is how well do we know the superintendent of Blue Ridge? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What path did you take to get here? Where were you last?
Where was I last? I'll start with the beginning. It might make more sense.
Okay.
I started off as a teacher and a football coach. I started in the Gilbert Public School District.
Okay.
And I started off, I think my first year was in 1990. I was with that district for a number of years. Then I went to Florence as the head football coach and teacher. And that's when I started getting interested in administration. I started to administer the summer programs and the intersession programs. And I started thinking a little bit more along the lines of school leadership.
What could be next for me?
What could be next, right. And so I had an opportunity to join a private school group that was technically based, Universal Technical Institute. I joined that group in 1997 and was there for the better part of 10 years. I led another organization as a vice president of operations. It was a study abroad, still in the education space. And then I had a chance to go run a school district. It's actually a technical school group, like a district, in York, Pennsylvania. And I did that for 5 years. And after I came back to Arizona, I went back to Universal Technical Institute in a vice president regional role for a while on the education side. And then I just determined I really wanted to get back into the public space and work for a public school district.
So I don't know the process. Does the school reach out to you? Do you reach out to the school when they're looking for a superintendent? How does that go?
I was brought in contact with Mike Elstock. Typically the board will hire someone to perform a search.
Got it.
And through that connection, visited with Mike, and decided I would make application for the Blue Ridge School District.
How long does the process take?
Well, I think from the time he first contacted me until the actual interview, it probably took a month, 6 weeks maybe.
Okay. One of the things we think in our head, I'm a disc jockey. People pretty much know what I do. I play music and act goofy and play commercials. But what does the day in the life of a superintendent look like? What kind of fires are you putting out?
Well, it's interesting because you can have a schedule, and I don't have a set schedule every day. Right. I go into the office and I wake up and I know there's going to be some challenge or a problem.
Sure.
And so that helps you to adjust because if you're very organized, I'm kind of a list maker. I try to stay organized.
Sure.
And at first, in leadership capacity, if you have, let's just say, 2,500 students and 250 employees, a lot of life comes at you.
I would imagine.
It does. So there's tragedy, there's pleasant surprises that occur, and there's problems. And dealing with people, it's challenge intensive. And so I've just learned, wake up, get to the office as early as I can, try to get organized and say, okay, what's going on today?
Loose schedules.
Yeah, kind of parameters. Like I want to try to get these 4 or 5 things done, and I'll have appointments that are scheduled. And based on the gravity of whatever happens, those might need to be rescheduled. But
do you get involved in discipline issues?
Only if they come to my level, they're serious, because parents sometimes will try to go directly to me and not go to the principal.
Right.
And then I redirect them because it's the fair thing to do for both the student and the principal, is to follow the proper order.
Sure.
But normally when they come to me, it is something like a long-term suspension or an expulsion hearing, one of those types of things.
Now, or an appeal. I mean, if they don't like the principal's decision, that would come to you?
And that's proper. And I'll hear them out. I'll sit down and visit with them. Many times I want the principal there too, so I'm sure I'm getting both sides of the story. And in the event that I thought they had been dealt with unfairly, then I would excuse them and talk to the principal, and we'd work through it.
Sure.
And most of the time, the decision has been made well, and it's been fair, and if nothing else, the parent appreciates the fact they've been heard.
Okay. One of the things I like to talk about when I'm talking to somebody new, tell us a little bit about what one of those examples of a fire that comes up, a challenge, what's something that might make you put your to-do list aside for a little while? What's something you might see spring up?
Well, someone said, what is your primary responsibility? And that's easy. It's the health, safety, and welfare of our employees and our students. Right. That's the first thing. So if there's any of those spaces, if it has to do with the health, safety, or welfare, just recently started looking at my phone at 1 in the morning, started getting data off the internet, looked like, man, we're going to have a big storm
here. Oh, sure. Yeah.
And it could hit after we have the kids in class. Then we have them stranded. So you have to make those calls and gather your resources. I started to talk to our facilities JB, Jeff Akins, by about 3 in the morning.
Right.
You know, trying to make a decision what you're going to do. It doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but if you don't do those simple things right, then you put your employee safety and the kids' safety at risk, which we won't do. So it might be one of those kinds of decisions, or it could be a discipline. It could be somebody made a bad choice, either a student or an employee or something, and you have to deal with those choices, the outcome of those consequences, rather.
How many times do you get asked about, because I drive by Blue Ridge all the time, I've got kids that attend the middle and the elementary school. How many times do you get asked about the sidewalk and the sign, and everyone's concerned, where did that money come from?
The first day, we were overrun with concerns that, this is where override money went.
Yeah.
So I just said quickly, look, we need to make a sign and help people understand this is not a district project.
That explains the banner.
Yeah, that's the banner. Your funds were not used for this. This was from ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation. We actually granted an easement and deeded some property over to the state, relinquished that property so there could be that pathway to go through.
Right.
And by doing that, the area where we put the marquee is no longer our property. So we were able to use, it's an account that had been growing over the past, 40 years, called Adjacent Ways.
Right.
It has a very narrow use, but we could use the adjacent ways on the marquee. But we didn't want people thinking we spent money on the marquee or on the pathway.
It's funny what we make up in our head.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it looked like it's a district project.
Right.
So we cooperated with the town. The town was great about sending out messages as well, and that's why we still have the marquee. No overrides fund were used for this marquee of the project.
Totally makes sense. You mentioned, JB, some of the backbone, one of the things I read online about a superintendent is it's kind of who you surround yourself with. Let's talk about some of your support staff, then we'll get into the mission statement we're trying to develop. You mentioned JB. Mary, I reached out to Mary, really good person, and it seems like you've surrounded yourself with some really great people. Let's talk about some of those.
I've been very fortunate. I would go a step further and say a superintendent's success, he or she is going to succeed if they build a good team around them.
Right.
And so through retirements and some people choosing to go different directions, and life had come at people, they decide they want to go somewhere else, we've been able to really develop our own team. And I think that's important because you could put your stamp on it and you hire people that see it like you see it. It might not be right or wrong, but it makes it easier if everybody has a shared vision. So Mary has a lot of experience in HR. We needed that capacity within the district, and she's also a very good organizer. About 10% of the time she keeps me organized.
Got to have somebody.
You do. You really do, because there's a lot of things that happen and you have to be dynamic and flexible because your schedule blows up on you.
Oh, sure.
Jeff Akins for our facilities and our transportation. Without a guy like Jeff, schools don't stay open.
Sure.
And he has been phenomenal. He works with limited resources. He finds ways to get things done.
He's probably a good contact person to pull the trigger, whether or not we're doing snow day or delay.
Absolutely. He visits with Jennifer, who is our transportation supervisor. Jennifer will be in contact with JB, and he and I and the principals are on the phone early in the morning trying to figure out, okay, what's the call? And then I take all that data, and then at some point you have to make a decision.
Yep.
And so I'm always going to err on the side of safety.
Makes sense. The other day it was just the gasoline gelling up. It wasn't necessarily the roads.
Right. With the delay, yes, we had, and I learned something from that. I mean, we had Pennsylvania, you would think, well, it gets brutally cold. It does. But they develop systems and ways of doing things because it's been like that forever. But we learned that if the buses are going to set for a day or two, you better get in there and start them up the day before, let them run a couple hours. And so that was a little bit of a hard lesson, but we learned. One
of the things you're doing right now for Blue Ridge, you're talking about developing a mission statement. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Right. It's actually a vision statement. Mission statements we've done in the past, and as I was wrestling with how do we get started, and I just asked a couple employees, what's our mission statement? And I asked, 30 or 40, no one knew what it was.
Right.
So those are just become words, and that's not to take anything away from how it was developed. When you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. But they become, irrespective of how powerful the words might be, if there's not a vision associated with people can't see it, they tend not to share and do it.
Sure. So I like what you wrote online about it. Success is not an individual endeavor. Do you remember writing that quote?
Yes. Yep.
It's about the team that is around you. And
teamwork, hard work, collaboration, and it's sustained with passion and enthusiasm.
Right.
And so there's what we've tried to do, and what I've tried to do is surround myself with people that share kind of my approach. So Jay Cox is a good example. He's the principal at the high school. Jay's got a lot of energy. Jay's about people first and process second. He wants to take care of that person first, and he just puts every fiber of his being into that job.
Right.
Lauren Webb's another example of a person that is really caring. He's responsible now. Alicia retired after many years of very successful service. She's went a different direction. So Lauren came in, and he has a very compassionate approach, and he is able to juggle a lot of balls at one time. And with Brad Edgington supporting him, they're supporting the middle school and the junior high. And then Dave Clark, you couldn't ask for a better elementary school principal. He loves the kids love him, and that kind of energy engagement, it's genuine or it's not. You know, he genuinely loves his kids and they love him.
Perfect.
And his teachers respect and appreciate him.
We're visiting with Michael Wright on School Zone. He is the superintendent of Blue Ridge Schools. When we come back, we're going to dive more into the vision statement here on School Zone on Shallow TV. Welcome back to School Zone on Shallow TV. Our guest today, Mike Wright with the Blue Ridge School District Superintendent.
Yes, sir.
First year.
That's correct.
One of our goals today is to get to know a little bit more about you. And the support staff that's around you, that's very important in the job of a superintendent. Let's talk about Brenda Thomas Martinez.
Absolutely. Brenda has been the business manager for 19 years. She's in her 20th year now, just recently promoted to Director of Finance and Business Operations.
Right.
And so if you ask around in the area the people that know school finance and you say Brenda Thomas Martinez, they know she's clearly the best at what she does.
The A-team.
Yes, she is. She's A+.
Very nice.
Yeah, she really is. And so we're fortunate to have her, especially at a school district of our size, to have someone with that expertise and knowledge. And she does a great job. So she and I have, we've worked really closely together to try to maximize efficiency.
Sure.
Just recently, we refinanced a bond that saved the taxpayers $1.2 million in savings and interest.
Wow.
Through consolidation, we've saved about $500,000. And then we've reinvested that into teacher salaries and employees as well. Yeah. And so it's been through her efforts and teaming with her on these important projects, we've been able to move forward and take some pretty important steps forward.
Some tough decisions, I would imagine.
They are. They always are. Lucky enough when you have resignation or retirement, then you look at it organizationally and see where can you take those two roles and combine them and create one. So when Nancy Borton, when she retired after many years with the district, right, that provided an opportunity to, instead of having a director of facilities and director of transportation, to create one. And so that's when Jeff Akins assumed both those responsibilities, and Jennifer is the supervisor of the transportation site.
Nice.
So those types of changes helped us to consolidate and save about $500,000.
Diane Butler, part of the team?
Diane Butler is the heart of the team. She is amazing. I did a little message yesterday. She's announced recently she's going to retire after this in the spring. And so she's been with us for over 45 years. And so she began as a teacher, I think, in 1969 or 70.
Did you say 45 years?
45 years with Blue Ridge.
I wasn't even born then. Okay, maybe.
It's just been a long time, and she'd served in an administrative capacity, I think, 35 of those 45 years. Right. And she's she's a beautiful person.
It helps you get through your day when you know you got the staff like this.
It does, because your staff, your team is where the success is derived from coming together as a team. And we meet a lot. We meet about every other week for some 4 or 5 hours.
Teresa Sorensen. We're naming names now.
Yes. Terry helps us administer the food program.
Right.
Southwest, she coordinates that and also handles open enrollment, and she receives people as they come in as well. Does a good job.
Diana Jackson.
Diana Jackson does she has one of the most thankless jobs because she has to process POs and different checks and a lot of really detailed oriented stuff that she does. If it doesn't get done right, people know about it, but when it's done right, they don't know about it.
Kind of a thankless.
It's a very tough role. She does a great job with that.
Angie Reese.
Angie does our payroll. She's doing it virtually.
So she's the most important person.
Yeah, if you don't get paid, she's very important. And so she'll help. She does that. Her family actually moved because of her husband's job. He, I think, started a drilling company out in Tucson. Mm-hmm. And so she remotes in. She does stuff virtually, and she comes in once or twice a month.
Really?
Yeah, she started off with the school district right out of high school. I think she's been here 16 years. And so she has a lot of prior knowledge and a lot of the detail that makes it good. She's a good worker. She's very bright.
Danielle Hancock.
Yeah, Danielle Hancock is new. She joined our team. She worked for the county, and she's assisting Brenda
Right.
on our school finance side. And she's a school finance specialist, has a lot of experience in that area, and also just in administration of some of these areas that have to be done, that if they're not done right,
Right.
and the reports doesn't get filed, ball gets dropped, in the end it costs a problem. So
So we know some of the people on the team now. Let's talk about how you develop the vision statement. That's what we're currently doing?
yes. So
What's that process look like?
When
I'm
I got
sorry.
hired, the board charged me with coming up with a mission statement. They felt that we had a mission statement for a number of years and just wanted to know if it needed to be refreshed.
Right.
So we talked about a little earlier that I couldn't find anybody that could recite it, and I finally found somebody who could show me where it was. And then so
That's good stuff.
It's the truth. And so I had been working with Dr. Dennis Deaton early 2000 at Universal Technical Institute, and he took us through a breakthrough performance and a change leader type of, it was a process. And so I recognized we had made some progress in getting together and coming together as a team. We had BR days where we invited the community. We had about 400 people show up over the course of 2 days and donate about 16 hours of time each. And so the cumulative effect was pretty significant. But I didn't want to stall. And I felt like we had kind of got organized based on what our team wanted, the direction we wanted to go.
Right.
But we needed to take it several steps further.
Now, whose input are we listening to? on
Yeah, and
that?
how are we going to do that?
Right.
And so we had spent 9 months working together as a team, bringing in some of the staff and faculty and others. But I realized, look, we need to slow down and make sure that all the key stakeholders are the community leaders, church leaders, business leaders, parents, students, are all involved in this process. My view is this is the community school. It's not the board school or
Sure.
Mike Wright's school. It's the Blue Ridge Pine Top Lakeside Community School. So that process was to invite a bunch of people, and we invited 75 folks last Friday to participate in a change leader meeting.
Okay.
It's vision leaders. And 25 of the 75 were from the outside, from our community in various roles.
So their input is not only just listened to, it's applied. How are we applying that?
And that's true. All of it, all the input. If you're a person that works for Jeff, you might be Ray that works as one of our mechanics. His input is just as important as Dave Clark, who was the principal. He has his perspective. We all have different perspectives.
You listen to Dave Clark?
Absolutely.
I know Dave Clark.
Absolutely. And so the parents and students too, we want their input. So
Sure.
ultimately, we want to create a shared vision. That's where the power is. If you're going to really win over a community's head, heart, and hands, they have to be a part of that creation in order to own it and
Makes
really
sense.
feel like that there's ownership.
Right, because the last thing anybody wants is for someone to ask for their opinion, but then not feel that it's being listened to genuinely or maybe even implemented.
It is. And I think even worse than that is not being asked at all.
Oh, sure.
So if people feel marginalized or ignored, they tend to become frustrated, rightfully so. Then you create enemies. You can bring a person in that disagrees with you, but if you hear them out and you're truly listening and you understand their perspective, you might agree to disagree. They're going to have respect for, hey, he at least heard me out.
Right.
I don't agree with the direction, but I had my say.
So as we move forward, where do we see Blue Ridge going?
Well, Blue Ridge has been a great district long before I arrived. I mean, it has a long-standing tradition of academic
Always good
success.
grades when they grade the school.
Right. It's a good district. It's solid. It's a solid community. Our music and athletic programs have been well recognized for a long time. My charge is to take where we are. What can we,
Right.
bring back some of the old tradition. So tradition, innovation are two of the things that we talked about, and then achievement. Those are the three things that we talk about as the cornerstones of what we're trying to do. But the vision, I can tell you what my vision is.
Right.
And I know that that's important, but rather than just sharing my vision, I want to know what everyone else's vision is. What is their vision for our district?
You hear mostly positive? Is it a mix?
In terms of
When you're asking the community what you're hearing.
there's some frustration within every community and every organization.
Sure. Everybody fights change.
Generally, and change is tough. It's tougher for some personalities than others. But the general consensus is that we appreciate that you're asking our opinion.
Right.
And I can guarantee you that not everyone approves with everything that we've done, and that's the price of leadership. You're going to have to make some decisions that are going to be less than popular.
Oh, I would imagine.
But you can't make them in a vacuum. You can't make them without the input of your team and without trying to at least make the effort to help people understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And so with respect to division leaders, we had tremendous feedback, all of which has been positive because people appreciate that effort.
So I reached out. I have a radio show on 96.5 in the morning, Storm. And I reached out and asked people if they could ask the superintendent a question. What would they like to ask him? And one of the ones I heard multiple times is, what do you think high school students should know as they move into the new world, the grown-up world, if you will? What kind of standards do you think should be set for them?
I think that there's a big gap that we're trying to fill in between traditional education and what the marketplace is demanding.
Oh, I'd imagine.
If you look at this, the Blue Ridge is unique in that we probably have a greater level of students that actually pursue a 2 or 4 year college education than the general population in the state of Arizona.
That's nice.
It is. We still, at best, we might have 35% that are going to pursue that track. And of the 35%, perhaps 20 graduate, 20% of that core. Nationally, maybe 20% go on to a 4-year school, and maybe 9 to 10 to 12% actually graduate. So what are we doing with the other 82%?
Right.
And in my view, is the technical trades are really important. We're bringing back our automotive program in January. Howie Williams is coming back. He's taught it for years.
Right.
He loves the program. He's passionate about it. And we have a lot of resources there that were just mothballed. And so we're placing a bet that we're going to be able to help students and reach a certain segment of students that otherwise might have been, I don't know if ignored's the right word, but not served to the highest extent. And so technical skills are important. I would love to see, for instance, my son's going to college. He also has a technical skill. He worked with his uncle, that's an electrician. He has a skill that he's employable through college to help him put himself through school. Not everybody has an uncle that's an electrician or a contractor to help him.
Exactly.
I would love to see everybody exiting the Blue Ridge School District that had a marketable skill when they graduated, either in an auto shop or as a computer programmer, maybe not program, but light networking, troubleshooting, something they could do on the technical side. We train right now people that can go into graphic arts, the culinary arts, and some of these other areas too. So we need to expand and build on that because there are a group of students' needs that are not being met throughout the state.
Makes sense. Especially, it seems like you're also talking to a larger number there rather than you can actually help more.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and that's the hard thing because I think culturally, everybody, you ask a kid, I remember when I went to school 150 years ago, what are you going to do when you graduate? And you'd say, I'm going to go to college. Sure. Oh, it's a response they wanted and got your parents off your back.
Right.
And you found out very few of those kids actually went to college. Or my dad was the superintendent of schools. I went to college. I had no idea what I was going to study, but I knew I was going to go to college. It was important to our family. And I had the family support and I had the academic background to enable me to do that.
Right.
But I grew up with a lot of kids that didn't have the family support that I did.
Makes sense.
And didn't have that same desire either. But what did they do?
In closing, let's talk to the person that wants to reach out to you and has a question. What does the process look like? Can you just pick up the phone, call you, get
Absolutely.
to you? How does that look?
I have an open door policy, and I will take, if it's an urgent matter, I was in a meeting this last Friday, and a grandfather was adamant that he needed to speak to me. It was an emergency. I excused myself, and I visited with that grandfather. And that we have to be accessible. If there's one thing my administration, I think we will achieve, and we've made great strides toward, is being an open district. We're here, we have an open, we have to follow a process. We can't just march down the school and run and grab your kid because there's safety issues too. But we don't have a metaphoric moat around that district. It's a welcome mat. Come on in.
Okay.
We're interested in your input.
We're listening to the community and to the parents and the students.
Absolutely.
Mac Wright, thanks for being our guest on School Zone today.
Pleasure.
You bet. You've been watching School Zone, the show all about your local school districts here in the White Mountains. I'm your host, Tommy Boy. Mike Wright was our guest. Thank you for watching School Zone on Charlotte TV.